Hi everyone, my name is Zeph and welcome to the Star Network podcast. Today we have a special guest with us, Ijeoma Balogun, who's the CEO and founder of Redrick PR. Hi Ijeoma, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Hi Zeph, I'm actually super excited to be here. This is my first time being on a podcast, so it should be exciting. Really excited to be on the Star Network podcast today.
Amazing, I'm glad to have you. So tell us more about Redrick PR.
Okay. We're a PR agency. I always say we're growing Africa's #1 lifestyle, consumer and entertainment PR agency.
It's so funny. So I've always known about Redrick, and I've seen Redrick evolve from time. You see activations, you see events, and the beauty about Redrick, from what I see, is that it's very multidimensional. When people usually say PR, there's this conception that is just limited to communications, or I need a PR agency to put out information in a newspaper. But clearly your work at Redrick is way more than that. So can you shed more light to how multidimensional it is?
PR is definitely, multidimensional, and it has changed so much in terms of with the digital evolution, the growth of social media, PR has become, and also, the change of the way people sort of assimilate information, right? So if you want to influence public opinion, you kind of have to go where the public is, right? And so because of that, you find that, you're engaging across multiple platforms. Yes, the traditional sort of way of doing PR still exists. Traditional platforms are still growing, especially, they have integrated into digital and have become powerful in those spaces. But they're different ways, right? So it always just starts with what's the insight? Who am I trying to influence, and where are they, and how can I influence them? So that then leads you to eventing sometimes, right? Especially in Nigeria, we're kind of very big. We're very, very big on events, right? So you would still have your stakeholder engagement. You would still have, your executive profiling elements. But there is, especially when you're dealing with consumer and lifestyle, you can't sort of ignore the event, and entertainment brands, you can't sort of ignore the eventing aspect of the PR, should I say, of the PR value chain.
No, that's amazing. And it's so interesting how you've been able to show the different segmentation. It's not just, hey, let's put out communication for you, but, we can do activations as well. So with everything you've said, it's clear that businesses even need PR to help them scale their business operations. And for the event aspect, is it more of Redrick will literally take management of whatever events that they want to do, you source the vendors and you execute it for them? So would you say that PR is needed to actually help a company grow? Do you think that businesses don't even see that they need it in terms of growth? They think it's just publicity, but there's a growth element to that. Would you say?
100% PR is needed for growth, right? For example, you're a tech company and you're in a stage of your business where you kind of want to raise funds, right? There is a positioning element that PR can help with: strategic positioning, strategic stakeholder engagement, right? Strategic sort of press placements and press mentions and features and interviews for that type of positioning. Now you're a consumer brand and you are trying to sort of attract maybe a new segment of people, right? PR also plays a role in there in terms of, okay, how do we attract new audiences? Where are they? How can we reach them? So it has always, I would say it has always been integral. Whether you're a corporate company or you are a consumer-led company or a lifestyle-led company, it's always sort of been integral. For us, there are certain brands where they treat experiential separately from PR. So with those brands, we support the experiential team, because I always say certain things like your events should always have a PR lens, right? So especially when you operate in the consumer and lifestyle element, you do events, yes, to engage with your target audience and engage with them in a way that is intimate, right? But in doing that, with eventing, you also want to sort of gain earned media, right? It's a term we use in PR. Yeah. So, there's paid media, there's owned media, there's earned media. So earned media is sort of like media publicity you get that that you were not involved in, that people just willingly.
So like an influencer.
So like an influencer or a press article, right, by a journalist, like you that just decided to write about your company, or you send them a press release, they're interested in it, they want to dig in deeper and say, oh, we want to interview you and get some, and pull out our own story and our own narratives from this, right? So that's earned media. So in the space of like an event, for example, how do I make my event worthy, that is shareable? Like an influencer wants to share that they came to this event, right? The press wants to say, oh, that came to the event, say they want to write about it. So you kind of have to also think about it from a PR lens. So that is when, sometimes, there's an experiential agency that 100% does the event, and then PR supports the experiential agency instead of making sure that there's a PR lens to how you sort of activate. And then we have certain clients where we sort of handle the activation from top to bottom, right, across 360, in terms of selecting the vendors, working with them on experiences, and pulling partners to kind of collaborating with partners to kind of bring it together.
No, Ijeoma, and I love you've been able to just show like a 360 view. One thing that stuck out for me is that you said, how is this business trying to ensure that the event is shareable? And what I find, in our market today, and, there's a lot of improvements, is people do activations, but they never really think about that. Why would I even want to? What is the motivating factor for someone to want to share?
Yeah.
Experiential is the keyword that you use. Yeah. And, I've seen a lot of Redrick PR activations online. And when I see it, I'm like, yeah, Redrick, you guys are onto something. You get it because you get people speaking about it, or there's like some sort of like immersion and people are interested. But a thing I want to touch on is, do you feel that there should be more VC investing into like the creative space, like in public relations? Because what I find is when VCs come in, they want to invest in like fintechs and health tech and ed tech, which is fine. Those things are important. But the creative market, especially in Africa, there's such a huge investment gap.
Like, even when you check for opportunities for like a founder in the creative space, let's leave funding out of it, right? So there are these platforms where you kind of see like opportunities in terms of like grants or in terms of fellowships. You hardly ever see you see journalism, which is fantastic, but you hardly ever see something in comms. There's definitely a gap there. I understand that, scaling an agency is, it requires a bit more. Like, it's not as clear as a path than scaling like a fintech, right? And then you are dealing with big numbers there. Like you're dealing with like big, big numbers, because we all know Nigeria has like this huge consumer base. So, or like health, right? So you find that a lot of the time, and I don't know why, but it exists 100%. Even I would say beyond funding, like just general opportunities. The other day I was having a conversation with someone, and I said, because a lot of what I do also is just think through, okay, where do I see myself in 10 years? Where do I see myself in 15 years? Where do I see myself in, X amount of years? And I was like, oh, I would love to sort of be in a board and serve in a board capacity. So I was having conversations with certain people to say, oh, I'm a PR professional. What is the angle there? And it wasn't very promising.
Like no one knew what to say.
In terms of, at the end of the day, yes, you're a woman. So there's that thing of like wanting, there's opportunities are, boards that want to kind of have more women on their boards. There's that. But it all came back to like it all came back to, and it could be positive, or you can see it as it could be positive or negative. That's how I took the feedback. In terms of, the feedback was like, people want to know that you have business knowledge. Like, great, you know how to sort of appeal to consumers, but how, from a business perspective, if if you can't deal with like corporate governance, but from a business perspective, how they want to know that you understand numbers, you know what I mean, and you can, say this is what the business needs to do to grow, So in that, I just started thinking, like, I was like, okay, you have this career for years. How do I also turn my knowledge into something that is valuable in certain sort of like, will I say, more traditional, for lack of a better word, companies and structures? But there is that thing, there, to be honest, there's a lot of People see creative industries a bit more seriously now, and with music and with film, it's become like, okay, this is actually serious business. But we do need more sort of eyeballs on that, because as much as there is a growing investment in comparison to health, tech, it's substantially lower.
Yeah, correct. And honestly, like you've said it on in a sense whereby the more that I think about it and when I have conversations with other young people who are creatives, for them this funding or investment gap is not there. I like that you said there's hardly any opportunities. I also like that you mentioned that, you're starting to think long term, like, okay, I want to be on a board seat, and the feedback is almost like, yeah, but where's the business angle? I find that interesting because I feel like with public relations, that's huge consumer facing. So if anything, there is so much credibility to be on a board seat, because in my world, like, business narrative enough to be qualified. And then I even started thinking as you were speaking, I was like, could a Redrick even transform to then create opportunities for other people who want to build PR agencies or publication houses? And Redrick sort of even has like a grant scheme to run that could even be like a business angle. So I feel like the more that, and you're saying the right things, I feel like the more that these conversations are had within like your creative space environment, something just has to be built because it doesn't exist, right? But speaking about funding and grants, etc., there is so much recognition, in terms of like global brands wanting to like come into the Nigerian market, Africa at large, there's the Fenty Beauty launch, etc. Different brands are coming in. And I know Redrick has done work with like L'Oreal and the NBA. What has that been like? Like, working with these global brands, like how different is it to like work with them versus like our local market businesses?
Okay, so, certain different global brands have different global structures. So you have like the NBA who actually have opened an office here in Nigeria. They have a vice president who is Nigerian and has worked in Nigeria, and has knowledge of the market. And then you have people who come in and kind of have presence here, maybe like especially within the beauty space. You see that they have presence with like a retailer here, an agency here. So they kind of hire local experts, but basically they're still sort of like reporting to their headquarters or their office in Paris, for example, in L'Oreal. The truth of the matter is that you can't ignore Nigeria. Our numbers are too
huge
and tantalizing. Right? You can't ignore that in the grand scheme of things, where you're looking towards, like, you're a forward-thinking company and thinking what is next, right? What is the future saying, right? And the future is saying Africa, right? And Nigeria, sits at the center of that, right? So that's one thing. You can't ignore the market. I think what is, what I see and the people who win at it is people who get local experts, because the truth of the matter is that Nigerians are Nigerians, and we have our unique Nigerianness, right? And when you understand that and you tap into that, that's when you succeed. When you understand that, so for example, like in my industry, we have a lot of press releases, right? You write press releases, you write copy, and then, you pitch it, and then people pick it up, Our media landscape, I always say we're not a press release nation. If you're a corporate company, of course, at certain points in time, there are certain things you must write a press release for, right? But you also need to understand and start thinking through ways, and, it also depends on who sort of you're speaking to. That's why it always starts with, who am I speaking to, right? And sort of like tailoring what you do to who you're speaking to or who you're targeting. So there is, I think, the brands that are winning are brands who are understanding that I want to be in this market, I want to operate in this market, but I do not know this market, and I'm not pretending like I know, or I'm not going to attempt to know this market. I'm going to hire experts, and I'm going to hire experts who are familiar with the market, who work in the market, and then can guide me on how best to sort of approach the market and go about establishing my brand in this market, right? So we tweak things, right? So there's certain things, for example, they've done like globally, but in Nigeria, like, oh, maybe not like this, it's not going to work like this, it's going to work in this way, because of how we sort of want to receive messages, how we engage, how we interact, so I think, to me, that consciousness and just accepting that, what, I don't know, right? I'm open, I'm open to learning. I'm willing to learn, right? This is a learning process. And to be honest, we also learn from it. So I always say something about like, I've really, really benefited from working with a lot of international companies because you learn. You also learn. So it's kind of like, it's a give, it's like a push and a pull, right? You're pushing on some things, like you're like, this is not going to work, but you're also pulling, you're also taking certain things because there are certain sort of like standards they have, and you're like, oh my goodness, oh, this is nice, okay, maybe we can incorporate it and start doing things like this, okay. Because I've had certain situations like that where they're like, oh, this is how they manage this, or this is how a briefing template is, or this, and I'm like, and we incorporated. So I think that because you're working with some brands that have been established for hundreds of years, it's not easy. Consistently on a certain level for years, you are doing something right, dominating different regions. So for me, I take it as there's an opportunity to learn. And for me, that's very key. To be honest, in the relationship, learning. Everybody on both sides willing to learn. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to say, these are our global best practices, so step up. And I'm like, okay, I take on the challenge. And as far as you two are also willing to learn, to say, okay, maybe we will do this like this here, and we'll do like this here, but if you insist as the local experts, this is how we should go about it in Nigeria, then I'm going to sort of learn, and I'm going to take that feedback. So I feel like there's a lot of learning. I'm growing, the team is growing, because we're learning to also do things at a certain standard. So that's what I see about the positive, is that when people do it right, acknowledging like, okay, I need a local expert, but even if like just choosing and deciding that you're coming to this market and putting those structures in place, to ensure that you are able to come in and have some presence, either through your retailers, through your agencies, a strong agency network, right, that makes sure you're able to sustain and still be locally relevant. It's amazing. So I'm fortunate to work with brands that are really invested to grow in this market and to really to connect with people, engage with us the way we like to be engaged, in a respectful way, right? So I'm fortunate to work with brands. So you really can't ignore the market.
Yeah,
you can't.
Yeah, no, Ijeoma, you've put a lot of like learning points here. So one is, for a global brand that wants to come in, is the willingness to learn, right? And so I have a development background, and something they always say is like, when they want to think about policies that will work for like less developed nations, etc., there's always like, have you taken into consideration the local context of how that market operates, which is everything that you're saying. Foreign brands need to learn, how does Nigeria work, which is completely different to how like a Senegal will work, a completely different environmental approach to how a Ghana will work, right? Once these things are top of mind priority, they're probably going to be successful. And getting the right experts, and then from a local market perspective, working with a foreign brand, your learning point here is we have to be willing to also see the standards and best practices that we can then adopt to then help us to become better, right? Yeah. And I think that's where maybe there are a lot of gaps. Like people just say, oh, there's this foreign brand, we're partnering with them, and then they miss the entire learning opportunity of, did you see how they did this process? Did you see how they were operational? Can we actually then factor that in? Because something you said is, these brands have been operating for hundreds of years. And in Nigeria, a key conversation that I like to now talk about is legacy. We don't have preservation of like legacy brand, like local content brand that somebody's great grandfather started. Very few, but it's even, how is it going to be sustained? Those conversations need to be had. What processes can be put in place? Is there, I had a guest who spoke about like family office structuring that wants to help businesses to preserve legacy of brands. But with everything you've said, it seems like Redrick does work across consumer, lifestyle, tech, everything. How do you ensure operational efficiency? Because it just kind of feels like to manage different brands and different sectors, you must have some sort of like industry knowledge. So how do you guys even run that?
Yeah, I think knowledge is key. Like in terms of having, I always say this in terms of, one, as a human being, the attitude and the willingness to always learn and be open to learning. I've not figured anything out, right? And knowledge gives you insights. Your knowledge, when you know this is the industry and you research, it gives you insights. And with those insights, strategies are born, right? With those insights, you research a brand and you say, okay, these are the unique sort of like insights we've pulled from this, right? You're able to sort of build strategies from that. So I think the first point of this thing is knowledge, knowing everything there is to know about the brand as number one. Because even if, and then just thinking through and also knowing your audience, right? So for us, how we, the truth of the matter is that we started in this space of, when I started the company, I used to work in fashion.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I used to work in fashion. I used to be the style. I was the first style editor of BellaNiger.com.
Oh yeah, that's true.
I grew the team. So I used to work in fashion. So when I even started PR, I thought I would operate in the fashion space, and then it evolved to what we've become now. And I think one key thing I would say is knowledge, like knowing the brand you're actually working on, like. Just learn, like know all that there is to know about that brand. Because once you know, you're able to then see those insights and build strategies. And the strongest strategies, come from that. Then that's one thing. Execution. We always say people have great plans, yep. But it's when it comes to execute that you see there is a gap. What you wrote on paper, what was it? What I ordered versus
what I got in reality.
I got to, like, what you wrote on paper
doesn't translate.
How do you then, okay, you have a great strategy. How do you then sort of implement it, and how do you execute it, right? What are sort of like the key milestones? What are sort of like the must-haves? What are the things that if you don't do, in terms of, because at some point, budget considerations, etc., you kind of have to prioritize. What are those big bets that if you don't do, then you might as well have done nothing, right? So really, like, then saying yes, we've researched, we have a great plan, we have a great strategy. Execution, I think for me, that is where, as a company, I focus on. If we say we're going to deliver something, we must deliver it. We must do it. Yes, sometimes, you write it, you put a strategy into place and you see that it's not going as planned. Then you go back and you say, okay, what do we need to fix? What do we need to do differently? Okay, what do we change? You're constantly monitoring. So in PR, you're constantly monitoring. You're constantly monitoring what are people's sentiments, what are people saying. Okay, we're running for example, if you're running a campaign and we want to get X amount of unique reach, and we want to get these positive sentiments, and we want to get, you have your KPIs, and you start the campaign, and like 1 week in,
it's changed.
You are not even seeing. You are not even. It's not looking like
what you thought.
There. Yeah. You have to go back. Be agile enough to say, okay, what do we fix? What are we doing? What are we not doing right? You know what I mean? What do we change? Agility, especially in this world, in this thing now. Things move so fast. You have to be agile to sort of say, what do we do? What do we need to fix? What's happening? What's going on? And you have to constantly monitor. Say, okay, what is the pulse? What is the pulse? What are people saying about us? What are the current sentiments about us, right? Media relations is very, very key. Why are people not interested in what I'm telling them they should be interested in? What's happening? What's going on? What's that gap? So there's the strategy is very key, like research, like knowledge, right? That gives you the basis and the foundation to come up with a good strategy. And then in executing, you have to sort of pay attention to monitoring, pay attention to your milestones, paying attention to those little things. I always tell my team, like, when we approach our week and we have this to-do list, I tell them to put every single thing, no matter how tiny it is, because it's the execution is not about this one big at the end. It's about what happens, those little tiny, breaking down your strategy into actionable. What are the actionable execution points that need to happen for me to get from point A to point B, from point B to point C, breaking it down and understanding what that entails to ensure at the end of the day, you reach your goal. If you do not do that, you miss a step. I say it all the time. PR is it's like these minute things you do to make sure, okay, I want to get you an interview opportunity. First, I send a pitch, right? I have to follow up on that pitch. Okay, I'm following up maybe via email, it's not working. I have to call a network to say, okay, I'm trying to reach this person. I really want to get this. Maybe if you don't have the person's contact, for example, right? I need to reach this journalist. I want to pitch a story. It's like those little, you do tiny minute steps to get to that goal. Get to that goal. So understanding what that execution sort of process and what that timeline and what it entails, and breaking it down into little bits. That's how, because, and I always say, one, when you say you are doing something, you must hold yourself accountable to that. 100%. Excellence is an absolute must, and anything worth doing is worth doing well. If not, just don't bother.
Correct. No, I love that, and I feel like everything you said is like even a master class in one. Just operational efficiency. It's very important to like learn about the things that you're trying to get into. Whatever you do, you must do it well. And you've pretty much even answered my next question. I was going to say, it sounds like your team is very solid, and a lot of brands or businesses, I think that's where they suffer, like finding the right employees. And I was going to say, as a business owner, how are you able to do that? But if it feels like you have a core value that helps you find them.
I don't know
the answer to that, which is fine.
Because, I think there is, to me, I'm always a bit about attitude, attitude over competency. You can learn competency. You can't. It's very hard to change an attitude.
I like that.
Do you have an attitude that is eager to learn? Like, are you eager to learn? I have people who, when they started working with us, yes, they knew certain things, but they didn't know certain things, because you can't know it all. Even I don't know it all, right? But are you willing to learn and unlearn? I don't believe I know everything. Yes, there's certain things that I know. I know my work. I understand, how to do certain things. But in that sort of confidence, let's not be mistaken. Like, I am also willing to learn, right? And willing to unlearn. It's so important. To me, like, that attitude, you can learn competencies. There are trainings you can do. It's your attitude, that attitude to learn, that, attitude to get things done. I'm focused on get the work done. I've gotten hires right and I've gotten hires wrong. You know what I mean? So it's like, I won't say that, I have the best team in the world. Correct. You know what I mean? But we are grooming the best team in the world. When you come to Redrick, there's something I always say. I'm all about like value. I always say, what do you want to get out of being in this company? You need to get something out of it beyond, I want to earn a salary. You need to sort of say, I want to work in this industry because in 5 years or in 6 years, I want to become a thought leader in this. And I feel like this is an integral part of my process, of my journey. We must, when they say, when they say, don't just go to school, let the school go through you. It's very important that Redrick goes through you. And I think I would say this, we have an amazingly strong alumni network. Past Redrick employees, people who've actually like come to the team with that attitude, are bad asses.
Oh wow, I love that.
I will tell you that any day.
Are they doing their own thing now?
They're either doing their own thing, they're adding values to like companies. I remember for our 10-year anniversary, we did like a shoot with like people who'd worked in like the company. The team, I'm very passionate about my team. I'm very passionate about growing them as best as I can. Also acknowledging my own limitations. It's very important to know what you can and cannot do. It's like self-awareness is like the best thing ever. So to me, it's that. So I feel like, for me, it's like I want value from you. I'm here to take something. You two come to take something, because let's be honest, like I want value from you. And I also want you to feel like being with us is valuable to your career journey. it's super important. We all, even in relationships, in friendships, it's all based on you're getting. I'm enjoying your company. That's why you're my friend. I like you. Make me laugh, right? And vice versa. You make me better. Like when I want to have a business, business ideas, I come to. There's an exchange of value. So for me, that's the core element. Like with my team, there must be an exchange of value. I try to be intentional about like grooming them in a certain way to be results oriented. We have like these 12 values that I actually sat down and wrote myself.
I love that.
Like I sat down and I said, what do I want from my team? What values do I want them to have, in terms of how they relate with each other, how they relate with, people, like with each other as colleagues. How do you relate with the client? So I was very intentional. I wrote that values document and I wrote it, and it's now become ingrained in. So now when we hire from that POV. Is there a culture match, right? Because our culture is very my culture. Oh my God, about this. My culture. Your
culture is amazing.
Oh God, I think we have.
I don't think I've ever heard a lot of like CEOs say this about their businesses.
Culture, and I'm very intentional about keeping it. Amazing. I'm very intentional about.
Give me one thing about your culture that stands out.
I always say that I say something like we do serious work, but it doesn't have to be serious. We're not doctors. So yes, the work you're doing is serious, but the approach to it should be fun. It should be fun. You should want to come to work. You know what I mean? You should want to, you should be excited to work on a project. You should be excited to do excellent work. So don't be, there was one day where something, and then Zikoko Vox Pop people, they stopped us and they did this, me and somebody who worked in it, and it went viral. But like, if you watch that video, you kind of know the type of culture we are. What we do serious work, and they will tell you if work is not done, there's wala. There's wala. It's not. There's no excuse for work not being done. But at the same time, you should bring some lightness to it, joy. You should do what you're doing because you're passionate about it, because you want to succeed. You want to do excellent work. So for me, it's about being able to kind of like get that thing where you take ownership and you want this for yourself. So for me, it's just really, to me, that's very key. Like our culture and like finding ways to maintain and working with like a great HR team to make sure that is in place and that is nurtured. And if there's any threat to that culture, it is addressed.
No, and I think you've said it all. I feel like the best cultures are where people actually feel empowered. And with everything you're saying, it sounds like you take the empowerment of your employees very seriously. Like it's very critical. Like, what do you even want out of this? And you find that sometimes in some businesses, I think founders tend to be afraid to even put that opportunity forward to their employees because they just want to retain them for the sake of retention and for the sake of help my business to make money, as opposed to, can you even invest in this person's life, right? And I like that mindset. I've always said to myself, if I start a huge business one day, I want that person to leave so empowered to the point where it's like, I don't want anybody to work with me forever. Literally, it's impossible. People are meant to enter your life, and it's a pass through to say, this person was in my life for this season, be it 5 years, be it whatever years, but this is what I got out of it, right? That's the whole point, to go through different people and different training. So everything that you're saying is like a masterclass, like I told you before. But the question I have for you is, I feel with public relations, you've mentioned activations, it's an industry that you're going to be burnt out. Like, how do you manage that? Like in terms of like your personal life, like what centers you, what keeps you grounded? How are you able to just like balance?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I think, one thing we usually do is in December, we close for like 2 to 3. We close for 3 weeks.
That's surprising because that's the busiest period.
Yes, but hey, something has to give, except, a project comes along, and as a team, we have to say, guys, because if you guys are doing this, so it means that this holiday is going. Do we feel this sort of like project or this thing is worth it? If as a team we all align and say, yes, we all want to do it, because the team also, they have ambitions. They want to work on ambitious brands and ambitious projects. So it's a lot. Eventing is, an aspect, but there's so many more sort of like layers to it, right? And for me, my I'm so precious about my life, like my personal life. I love my life. I love my family. I love my friends. I want to have time for them. Like, to me, that is what keeps me grounded. My family, like, just spending time with them, being there with them. It keeps me grounded. It keeps me centered, and I'm intentional about making time for that. I would not, I try not to miss like big family occasions, things like that. Like, it's really important for me to be present for my family. So Christmas, usually, because I have, one of my youngest sibling, they think we're twins. She lives abroad, so she comes over. Even in my in-laws, my husband's family, his sisters who live abroad, they come over. So like Christmas is that time where
everyone is together.
Everyone is back home. We're bonding. So to me, that's why I'm like, I'm out. I don't want to be getting any like work calls. Or to be honest, you're kind of always on, but at least it's reduced to kind of like a large degree. And the truth of the matter is that there are times when I have gone out with my friends and I have been exhausted, but I needed to do it for me. Like, I could have just said, let me stay at home, sleep in bed, but I needed to do it for me. Because if you keep waiting, I can't wait till December. By April,
so burnt out.
I'll be so burnt out, right? So I find pockets to kind of keep myself re-energized. And it doesn't have to be, and it could be a weekend, just like staying in bed or connecting with friends, going to a friend's house and just gisting about anything and nothing, hanging out with family. So I find those moments, I make those moments, because sometimes if you have to be intentional. So I make those moments where I'm like, I go and make sure I reconnect, because it's my family life that keeps me grounded. I don't like the work we do. You can get a bit carried away in terms of just the glitz, the glam. Even with my team, I always tell them that PR work is not glamorous. People tell me, "Oh my God,
it looks good," but the actual behind the scenes,
the work, it's
a lot.
It is grindy. There'll be some people you call someone for something, and they might be rude, and you have to manage that. It's a lot. It's not as fun as people as it looks, right? But for me, it's about just stealing those
pockets
moments,
of joy,
where I can, because it's like my family life, like my family, and that extends to my friends, because my friends are my family. That's what sort of keeps me grounded.
No, that's amazing. And I love that you said that. And a lot of like entrepreneurs and people that I've spoken to, it boils down to the same thing. This aspect of family is so critical. Friendship is so important, because we're at a season where we're building things that are so beyond us. I don't even think sometimes we understand the magnitude of what we're building and the legacy. If you don't have that family and friendship connection, then it's almost like, how do you find that like peace of mind, or how do you find like people to just run to like vent? Is so important. Ijeoma, it's been so amazing having you. You shared so much. I usually ask my guests, this is a last question. One, what is your favorite quote and why? If you don't have a favorite quote, it could even just be something that you've heard. But in addition to that question, in the spirit of it being like, International Women's Day on the 8th of March, I'm actually personally saying for the whole of March, we're celebrating leading women. Can you tell us a way in which Redrick PR has done that? I know you've done the bold woman activation, so maybe you can just touch a bit on that. But the last question is just, what is your favorite quote and why?
Okay, do I have a favorite quote? To be honest, I think I would just say, like, my motto is get it done and get it done well. Right? At the end of the day, it boils down to, did you do what you said you were going to do? And okay, you did it, right? How well did you do it? So, I think for me, that's like something I live by, and I tell my team all the time, what is worth doing is worth doing well. If not, just pack your bag and just say you are not doing it. What is worth doing is worth doing well. And I would say, like, in terms of like for women, to me, like from a company perspective, we've worked on like projects that that have, like bold. It's a Veuve Clicquot. Yeah. It's a Veuve Clicquot project, the Bold Women Awards campaign. But when I think about like International Women's Day, I actually like to go back to my team. Like I just think through.
Is your team all women?
Right now, but it's not intentional.
That's not intentional.
It's not intentional, okay. Right? But we are like, there are more women in comms for just generally reason, from an industry perspective. So we are like a women very heavy on women. It's a very important element, right? Empowering them, not just only in spaces where I have been a beneficiary. I always say this, I am a beneficiary of great women investments. Great. I can't, I know that, there are great women, and some people say, I know people who haven't had
the same experience. Correct.
But I have had a good experience with women.
Yeah, that's a blessing, yeah.
I have had a good experience with women. When I think through a lot of like it's women who have advocated for me in spaces that I haven't been in, so I'm a recipient of that, right? And it's very important for me that I'm able to do that for other people as well. For me, it's that about like being intentional with my team, because we are a predominantly women-led team, right? And just empowering them. To me, that's it boils down to what I'm doing with my team of women. We've done exciting campaigns for clients that concern women, which is fantastic, and these are great initiatives. But also just, to me, it boils down to my team. What am I doing with all these women? Like,
what am I
empowering
doing? Them?
If I can't do
empower
that.
them.
So for me, that is what is, when International Women's Day comes, I have a love-hate relationship with International Women's Day.
I actually do as well. So it's ironic I'm actually doing this, but that's a different topic.
I have a love-hate relationship, just because I feel it's important to do versus say. Do versus say.
Correct, yeah.
So it doesn't have to be something big. Those little things, just in the way you even treat.
Simple, yeah.
How do you talk to people?
Correct.
For me, it's about what are you doing in your own home.
It's so interesting because the theme for TSNP, the Standard World podcast, is authentically you. Yeah. And similar to you, I also have like a love-hate thing with International Women's Day. I usually don't make any noise about it because I feel sometimes the narrative of woman empowerment doesn't necessarily translate for a lot of people. So whether that's, maybe you reach out to like women to do something, and sometimes the experience is not always as forthcoming. It doesn't even have to be unpleasant, but maybe just that unity that we preach about sometimes isn't really there. Some people have it, and when I see it, I'm like, wow, you guys are so lucky. It's like such a blessing. Like what you've said, you're a recipient of women speaking for you in rooms that you haven't been in. I think that's beautiful to say. As you've also mentioned, and as I'm agreeing, some people, they don't have that experience, right? But I said to myself, why wait for someone to give you that experience? Why don't you become that person that you are seeking or you're looking up to? You don't need anyone to, if people are not speaking for you in rooms, speak for yourself and then speak for other people. So what does that translate to? So my theme is authentically you. How can you authentically take that power and say, someone reached out to me to say, oh my God, they're looking for an events company. You don't do events, but people that do, or friends that do. How can you advocate for that? So be that person. So we're very much aligned. I mean, everything you said, you've shared with Redrick. I know the audience has absolutely loved it. It's been great having you.
It's been great being here.
It's been so much fun. Like, I'm definitely going to have you back. I say this to all my guests. Like, it's interesting to see what you guys are doing, like in 5 or 10 years, and we have a conversation on it. So guys, it's been so amazing sitting down chatting with Ijeoma of Redrick. As you know, you can stay tuned on our podcast page at the Star Network Pod on Instagram, on all our different social media handles for when the next episodes will come out, and for Redrick to find out more about what they're doing about Ijeoma. Ijeoma, what's your handle?
For Redrick, at Redrick PR, and for myself, it is at Ijeoma Balogun.
Awesome. It's been so fantastic having you. I've had such a great time, and guys, until next time, bye.